Today's session, as I say, will be about term 3 and 4 work. And for the first part, I'm going to hand you over to Mr. Peter Edwards.
All right. Good afternoon, grade 10s, and welcome to this session today. So yes, we are going to be covering term 3 and 4 work. It is a great deal of content, so hopefully we'll be able to get through all the content today. As Mr. Van Zyl said earlier, we are going to be focusing on exam preparation. Obviously, it's term 3 and exams are around the corner, term 4. So we want to make sure that you are prepared for that. So you'll see a number of the sections that we're going to go through are in line with your booklet that you should have with you, but the focus will be on the types of questions that you can get at the end of the year. All right, so just some details. So obviously the revision program is obviously we're going to go through the content, the skills, and that's the exam prep, the NSC exams, which is a grade 12 side of things. Okay, that's what you can expect in 2 years' time, and we'll be looking at some concepts there. All right. Then the topics that we're going to be looking at today: creative thinking and problem solving, and then business opportunities and related factors. Those are the two that I'll be going through with you, and then Mr. Van Zyl will take over for the last 3: presentation of business information, business plan, and relationships and team performance. All right, so those are the topics that we are going to be looking at today. So let's get going. First and foremost, creative thinking and problem solving. All right, so we're going to have a look at these in a little bit more depth. Note that there is a difference between the two, creative thinking and problem solving. We'll be delving into what the differences are, and we obviously need creative thinking when looking at solving problems in the workplace. Very, very important in this day and age to look at things as innovatively and as different as possible. Okay, you don't want to be copying other people. You want to have unique ideas. All right, and then that will give you the competitive advantage you're looking for. So let's have a look, guys. Okay, so at the end of this topic, we want to cover these details, all right? You should be able to answer these at the end of this section. Okay, well, I'm not going to go through each and every one of them because we will be looking at a few of these type of questions as and when we go through this section. So you can have a look, you can pause there as this is a recording and have a look at what is expected of you at the end of this section. All right. Some of the key concepts that you need to know in this section, again, you can pause there. We are going to be covering each of these in a moment or two, so I'm not going to go through them right now. So let us start off with the meaning of creative thinking. So as an introduction, a definition, creative thinking involves the process of generating innovative and imaginative ideas. The aim here is to create a competitive advantage. There are a number of examples out there like Apple, Microsoft, these IT-based companies that are required to think creatively in order to solve problems, but creatively also to gain a competitive advantage over some of the other competitors within the industry. Right, further on to the definition. It is the ability to see something in a new way, in a different way. We are in a very quick changing environment, and you as a business owner in future need to be able to adapt and look at things differently. It is also about being able to think of unique ideas or new approaches to solving problems. It's possible that you might come up with a new approach to a problem which hasn't been thought of before. In this way, you might be able to produce a product in a far more efficient manner, maybe a cheaper manner, using different mechanisms, different tools as well, which creates that competitive advantage. Remember, competitive advantage can be a better product and also a cheaper product. So if you are able to produce something at a cheaper cost, that is a competitive advantage. Lastly, whether business consider making changes to a product or creating a new advert in the ever-changing world, creative thinking at the workplace can have a positive effect or positive impact on the business. Right, they mention advertising. There's a number of adverts that you might see on TV that you're required to be creative. That's what the aspect that you remember as a consumer. You remember the creative side of things when it comes to the advertising. So creative thinking can only be a positive impact on your business. All right, moving on to the next slide. The advantages of creative thinking. Now, remember I said to you the positive impact. This is what we're referring to. Okay, this is in your booklet, and as you can see, this is how we are going to be presenting the missing words, right? The missing word that is in your booklet is obviously the one that is in bold and a larger font size. So new, innovative, and better ideas and solutions are generated. The first and foremost, creative thinking advantage. Creativity is key to staying one step ahead of the competitors. Again, that is the point. You want to make sure that you are staying ahead of your competitors. Complex problems, business problems may be solved. Many business problems, if you own a business, no doubt you will come across some issues. Namely, load shedding. Okay, load shedding is a continuous problem for businesses, and no doubt those organizations have had to think creatively. You can look at COVID and how that presented some complex business problems, and businesses were required to think creatively in solving those issues. The second last one, it leads to an increase in productivity of the entire business. Okay, productivity in terms of the production, and not only that, but also the amount of work that employees are able to complete in a certain period of time. It improves motivation amongst staff members as well. Staff members like to think in creative ways. It's motivating to them, and also they feel like they are contributing to the work environment when they are able to provide their creative solutions to problems. Okay.
Mr.
Yes.
Edwards, I just want to say, when it comes to the advantages of creative thinking, guys, this comes from a grade 12 exam kind of question. So that's something that you will get next year in grade 11. You will also get it in grade 12. It's one of those favorite questions that you have at the end of your NSC exams. So guys, please make sure that you know this section really, really well, specifically this question, the advantages of creative thinking. And guys, when you study for a test, I know you guys are new to this, but please do not go and try and remember more than 4 of these bullet points. 4 is way more than enough for you to get most of your marks. In a section B question, it will be highly unlikely that the question will count more than 6 marks. So with other words, 3 facts. In section C, it can count a bit more. You won't know that, but if you remember 4, you would be safe. And try to take the 4 that makes the most sense to you, especially in this question, because you're definitely going to get it again in grade 12 and definitely in 11 as well.
All right, so grade 10s, just keep that in mind, maximum 4 answers or points in this section. We will go through the types of questions that you can get and where we as markers will be allocating the marks per bullet. All right, so that's the advantages of creative thinking. Moving on to ways in which businesses use creative thinking to generate entrepreneurial opportunities. Okay, again, this is also in your notes, and as you can see, we have 6 bullets there, and as Mr. Van Zyl referred to earlier, you will only need to really know 4 of these bullets. So again, remember the ones that make sense to you. So first and foremost, businesses, they can design environments that stimulate creative thinking. Think of companies like Facebook, Google. You can do YouTube videos, or you can check out YouTube videos where they're explaining how the Facebook work environment is based on a premise that they are trying to be as creative as possible, allowing employees to be as creative as possible as well. Right, the second one, encourage staff to come up with new ideas and solutions. Okay, you can have incentives to allow staff to actually be rewarded for coming up with new ideas. Encourage alternative ways of doing things. In this way, you are going to allow for new ideas to be thought of. Respond enthusiastically to all ideas and never let anyone feel less important. This is very important when it comes to your employees. You don't want to embarrass an employee that's come up with an idea. If you are responding enthusiastically to the ideas, that means that employees will be more likely to come up with their ideas and present them to the staff as well. Make time for brainstorming sessions to generate new ideas. For example, holding regular workshops. Okay, this is very important. You could do this on a weekly basis. Also, linked to this is allow it to happen in a more relaxed environment. We'll talk about brainstorming a little bit later in more depth, but it's important for employees to be thinking of ideas in an environment where they're relaxed and they feel comfortable to contribute their ideas. Okay, the last one, place suggestion boxes around the workplace and keep communication channels open. All right, suggestion boxes is very traditional for this sort of thing. That's an option, but in either way, you want to allow staff to have their say, to provide suggestions where possible. So suggestion box is a possibility. And also encourage it to be anonymous if that works for you. In that way, staff might be more likely to share their information or their ideas. All right, so that's ways in which the businesses use creative thinking to generate entrepreneurial opportunities. Mr. Van Zyl.
Mr. Edwards, you can also see this question is very, very important as well for grade 12 because this question comes up just like that in a grade 12 paper. Normally, when it's in a grade 12 paper, they say suggest ways. Then the double marks will be awarded at the end of the sentence. If it's explained, we will do later some of those different kinds of verbs and how you should answer those questions and those verbs. But guys, this is also a very important section to remember, or important question to remember. Secondly, what I want to say, guys, is whenever you get a question like suggest ways, please don't leave the answer blank because you've now forgotten what was in your workbook. I would like you to just respond with what you think or what you could remember. Put it in your own words because there might be something that is relevant there where you can get marks. So never ever leave a question out. Just rather write whatever you already know.
All right. Grade 10s, we are going to move on to exam preparation or looking at some revision. All right, so as I referred to earlier, this is going to be pretty much a focus for this session today to prepare you for what types of questions could come up. All right, so let's have a look. These questions are shown in your booklets. So what we will be doing is focusing on those verbs. All right, so the first one is elaborate on the meaning of creative thinking. So we've discussed the definition of creative thinking now. Now we are providing it in an answer. And as you can see there, we've said, remember the action verb and what's required of you. Now you'll see the memo that has been presented to you. Also, again, as we will refer to later, look at the mark allocation. Very important when answering questions to see how much information you need to provide. Okay, so when you look there, the word elaborate, explain, discuss, as you'll see as we go through these questions, requires you to have a statement and a qualifier. So you can see there, the first bullet says creative thinking involves the process, okay, of what? Of generating innovative and imaginative ideas. So you have your statement and what is called the qualifier. So you need to back up that statement with some further information. The next one is, it is the ability of seeing what? Something in a new way. All right, so as you can see, the mark allocation here is 4 marks. So with those first two bullets, you've got your 4 marks. But please remember, guys, you should have gone through with your teacher the different types of verbs, and we will be reminding you as we go through this today. All right, moving on to the next question over there. Read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. Often your questions will be set up in this sort of manner. Okay, so you'll be given a scenario and you will be able to have to answer, or scenario or case study, and you have to answer some questions thereafter. The first one says, quote 2 ways in which TS uses creative thinking to generate entrepreneurial opportunities. Okay, quote is the requirement there, and here is your answer. As you can see, it's 1 mark per quote. You don't have to put this in quotation marks. If you do, it's not a negative. It's not something that we work against you. But what needs to happen, it needs to be as per the text, verbatim, as you see it in the scenario. Okay, so rule of thumb, what I tell our students is that you write the entire sentence just to be safe. You don't be writing or taking down a small section of the sentence and you've actually taken the wrong part of the sentence. So include the entire sentence just so that you are 100% correct with regards to your quote. All right.
Never in their own words, Mr. Edwards. We see very often that learners have got the right idea, but then they abbreviate it and making it in their own words or something. Then it's no longer a quote, and then you will be marked wrong. Okay, so make sure that you put it in exactly the words as it is in the passage, because that's a quote.
All right. Moving on to the next question that you can come across. As you can see, 1 mark per quote over there. Okay, the next question, explain other ways in which businesses can use creative thinking to generate entrepreneurial opportunities. So you see the mark allocation there, 6 marks. Okay, so you should by now, at this time of the year, know that that is expecting 3 aspects or 3 bullets, all right. Bullets for this section. Looking at the verb explain, that means that you are going to have split marking, as they say. So you're going to need the statement and the qualifier again. Remembering the mark allocation in this instance is 6, so you would need 3 of those 6 possible answers there. First one, design environments, that stimulate creative thinking. You've got the statement, which is design environments, and the qualifier that stimulate creative thinking. All right, so that's explain as one of the verbs. Hopefully you've come across that in some of your control tests up until now. Now we move on to advise. Advise the management of TS about the advantages of creative thinking in the workplace. Okay, this is the first time that we're going to come across advise. This is your higher order type question. And as Ms. Vincel said earlier, you do not want to leave these sorts of things out. The 2 marks are allocated at the end of the sentence. So it's possible that if you don't recall what's in your notes, it's possible that we as markers could link your answer to one of these 6 possible answers here. You obviously only need to provide us with 3 in order to get your 6 marks. But please, grade 10s, do not leave it blank. Okay. As I said, we can read these answers, the memo, and if it's something that you have been able to provide us that links to one of these points in the memo, we can allocate those marks. All right, so that is advise, a higher order question, just like suggest or recommend. Okay, 2 marks at the end of the sentence. Right, so now we move on to the meaning of problem solving. Remember, this section is looking at creative thinking and problem solving. There is a difference between the two. Problem solving is the process of finding solutions to difficult or complex issues. You can understand, I mentioned 2 issues that businesses have had to deal with over the last 3 years. Load shedding a little bit longer, unfortunately, but COVID most certainly over the last 3 years. And they've had to most certainly be creative when thinking of solutions to this. It is a process that requires creative thinking. As I mentioned, alternative solutions are identified and critically evaluated. Okay, evaluated to see if they are actually successful. This is referring to the solutions. The next one is effective problem solving results in good decision making. Okay, if you have gone through an effective problem-solving process, it means that your decisions are going to be based on good information, and that is obviously where you want to be as a business owner. You want to be making the right decisions at the right time so that your business can be successful. Problems can be solved by groups or a team or an individual, right? And this is where very often the question mark over problem solving versus decision making is often a question that is asked. Distinguish between the two. Okay, decision making is often done by an individual, whereas problem solving is often done as a group. All right, so we're going to be going through this section now, looking at problem-solving techniques, and Mr. Van Zel and I will be having a little discussion with regards to that. Okay, moving on. We are going to have a look at an image on the right-hand side there. You can see the problem-solving cycle. So this is often asked like a list the problem-solving cycle, or the steps in the problem-solving cycle. List, state, so 1 mark per point there. Define the problem, formulate a strategy, implement the strategy, allocate resources, monitor the problem solving, evaluate the problem solving process, and obviously the first one was identify the problem. All right. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Identifying the problem and defining the problem. Remember, you might have an issue in the workplace. If you have identified the problem, that's one thing, but you might have different perspectives of that problem. And that's where defining the problem comes in, because you're going to need to ask all those that are concerned or all those that are affected by that issue. And as I say, one might have a different opinion to the other. Okay, so that's why we have identify the problem and then defining the problem. Okay, moving on. I did mention that we were going to look at some of the problem-solving techniques. The first one is the forced field technique. And as you can see with the image, we have two sides to this, all right? So you have your driving forces and your restraining forces. So you will have an issue or change that needs to take place that will be discussed as a group, right? And then you will discuss what are the positives to this change, okay? And you will list them down, okay? And then you would look on the right-hand side and you will list the negatives or the restraining forces, the reasons why you shouldn't make this change, okay? So for example, you might have 4 positives and 4 negatives. Each of these points you will allocate a mark out of 5 for relevance and importance. Okay, because you are marking them out of 5, each of them will be added up. So you will have a sum on the left-hand side and a sum on the right-hand side. So you will be able to analyze according to that and quantify based on that sum whether you should go for the change or not. Okay, so for instance, if the positives you've added up that they will come to say 16, and then your negatives result in a total of 12, it means that yes, quantifiably you should go for the change. Okay, so that is the force field analysis. Very useful. I've used it on numerous occasions to make a decision, and in business terms, it's very useful because you're able to put it down as quantified. You can say that according to the sum, the change should be a positive thing to do. All right, so that's a force field analysis. Mr. Van Zel, would you like to add something there?
Yes, the force field analysis is actually a bit more than that as well, because you can have various different options that you want to explore. So there's option 1. If we do option 1, what is the positives and what is the negatives? Option 2, what is the positives and negatives? Now, guys, because there's a rating scale of 1 to 5 for each force, whether it's driving or whatever. Let's say a force is it's a positive, but it's not really a positive, but it is positive, then you'll give it 1 out of 5. If it's a strong positive force, that this is really going to make life a lot easier, then you give it a 5 out of 5. And for each of those forces, you rate it like that. Now, guys, at the end, when you subtract the negative forces from the positive forces, and there's a positive sum, then, of course, it's a good decision. But now, of course, you can do that for various different solutions, and the one with the highest aggregate score is, of course, the best option to go for. So that is how we can use the force field analysis as well. I just would like to add, guys, just coming back to the academic side of it, this is a very important force to remember. It sounds almost like Marvel here. An important force or important thing to remember, because you are going to get this in grade 12, and they're going to ask you to explain how this must be applied. So you need to know the steps in this in grade 12. But for now, if you just know what is force field analysis and you're looking out for keywords, positives and negatives, you're looking out for if they have to list the pros and the cons to make a decision, then in section A you can always know that this is going to be the force field analysis. It's a favorite section A question to ask. But make sure that you know how this is applied and how it works.
Yeah. Just to elaborate there also with the section A, that's multiple choice. So very often that they'll list the different techniques, and you'll need to be identifying based on a scenario that they are referring to force field technique. All right. Now we move on to the next one, which is the Delphi technique. Now this is a very, very popular one. It's been asked in grade 12 as well. Okay, and this is all about asking experts. So as soon as you see a scenario or a multiple choice question referring to a panel of experts, you can assume that they are talking about the Delphi technique. So you will gather a panel of experts that won't know each other. You then put together a questionnaire which the experts are then going to answer. All right. Based on the answers from your experts, you will put together a completed summary of the answers that were given. If you don't come to a conclusion, then a second set of questionnaires is sent through to the panel of experts with some different answers or different questions. Okay, from that, then the answers are sent back to the monitor, who then summarizes the information again. And hopefully by that stage, there is a conclusion, there is a consensus that the problem should be solved in this particular way. If it's not, then this process will continue until a consensus is reached. The problem with one of these situations or this technique, it can take a great deal of time and can be expensive because you are getting experts in to assist with this. Okay, so please ensure that you know this technique very well, because it is often asked also in grade 11 and 12. So that is the Delphi technique.
Right. Mr. Edwards, also what I would like them to do here is just to make a note that the Delphi technique is about anonymity. Those experts that you have required to fill in your questionnaires, they don't know who each other is. They don't know who they are, and they fill in from their own mind. So they're not influenced by other people's responses, or they will not act because they know that another person is in the panel and all of a sudden my answers are going to be tweaked in a different way. That's very honest, and it protects them against bias. Right, so it's very important to note here, they are answered anonymously. You don't know, or the experts don't know about one another. And the second thing that is important here is they don't actually have to be in the same room. You can do it over internet or email or whatever the case may be, like a Google form or whatever, and they return those to you, and you compile it and summarize the information. So they don't have to be in the same room. They never meet face to face. You do this so that you can get consensus about what all the experts say. Now, the last thing that I want to say on this, guys, this is more of a forecasting tool. Forecasting means it's an educated guess about what's going to happen in the future. So with other words, I don't know what the rand dollar is going to do when I place my orders in 8 months' time. I want to do a quote, but I don't know what the price of these items would be in 8 months' time, so I need to know the rand dollar. So I contact a couple of, let's say, economists, and I get their views on what they think will happen in 5 or 6 or 8 months. And they give me an educated meaning. And then I compare it to all the other experts until such time as I get a very good idea of what is going to happen in the future. It's what we use this for. And as Mr. Ed would say, it's not for your small problems. It's not for, let's say, what kind of coffee I'm going to use in the staff room kitchen, or whatever the case may be. It's not about small things. This is about big decisions, where I'm going to head to in the future. This is about strategies and things, because it's expensive and incredibly time consuming to do.
All right, so that is the Delphi technique, grade 10s. We're going to move on to mind mapping. So this is something that you're probably familiar with, those of you that use this mechanism to study. It's about creating associations, ways in which you can recall information. That's what the way that you are using it. But in the workplace, this is used very often as a problem-solving technique. All right, so you're creating associations between two concepts. As you can see the image in front of you, how to mind map. You've got architecture, which is linked to natural, tree, dendrites, and flows, and so on. As you can see, they're all connected, and it's about creating associations. So quite a useful technique when trying to come up with different pieces of information. Right, the next one that we're going to look at is the empty chair technique. And this is a little bit of a strange one. Often my learners have a good chuckle when we talk about the empty chair technique. It's literally about an empty chair. Right, so you are going to be, you place an empty chair in the center of the classroom or of the conference center, and you are going to try and predict if someone was sitting in that chair, what would they say? What would their answers to your questions be? And that is the point. You're trying to think of different ways that people respond to certain questions. And in this way, you might come up with a solution. It's encouraging people to think differently about certain concepts. So that's the empty chair technique.
Mr. Edwards, before you move on, a favorite question that they ask in section A for this is, that's a problem-solving technique that you do on your own, right? So if the moment that you see that in a question where they say, where a manager makes a decision on his own, a technique that they can use, it's empty chair, because there's nobody else in the room. You imagine an imaginary person sitting there and what they would respond. So you do this on your own, and the idea is that you think through a problem diligently. That is what it's about.
All right. Nominal group technique is the next one that we're going to be looking at. A nominal group technique is very similar to brainstorming, but there's a more formal process to this. So you introduce and explain the issue that's at hand. Then you look at the members to generate ideas silently. All right, so they generate as many ideas as possible. You write those ideas down. At this stage, then you share the ideas. Once those ideas have been shared, then the actual ideas are discussed as a group, and from then onwards, you're going to vote and rank the ideas. Obviously, the one that's ranked the highest will be the one that you, as a group or a business, will go with. Right, so a little bit of a formal process of brainstorming. That is the nominal group technique. The next one is the forced combinations technique. And the reason why I've got a phone and a camera there is that at some stage someone decided, well, let us put the two together, right? And I mean, it's amazing to think how we have gone from your normal handheld camera to the use of a phone for camera purposes. So at some stage someone was looking at a problem saying, well, how can we have a camera around our necks and then a phone in our pocket? Well, let's see at certain ways, or see how we could actually combine the two into one product. And really, we can't really look back since we've had the camera attached to the phone. Okay, so it's ways in which to force people to think differently about particular products. All right, the next one that we're going to look at is your brainstorming, and we have discussed brainstorming already. As I said, very similar to the nominal group technique. This is about generating as many ideas as possible. And as I said earlier, is you want to put this in, you put your staff, your employees, in an environment which encourages brainstorming, encourages creative thinking. So a lot of the time, brainstorming takes place outside of the work environment. So you'd spend time outside the work environment, and you're encouraged to come up with new ideas because your staff are in a relaxed, more comfortable situation. So brainstorming is all about coming up with ideas and recording those ideas. It doesn't matter how arbitrary or strange the ideas may be. All right. The last one is Scamper. Right, Scamper is an acronym, and it stands for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to another use, eliminate, and reverse. Now, the whole point here is to look at a product that you have at your disposal at any time. Maybe it's a product that's kind of not being sold very often anymore, or you'd like to be selling more of the product, and you were looking at ways in which you can change it, or just to improve your sales. You can use Scamper in order to force a group of staff members to think about that product in a different way. You could look at ways in which you could substitute certain parts of the product. Again, we can go back to that camera and the phone. That would be the combine aspect, that second, the C part. Okay, look at ways in which we can combine a camera and a phone. And now we see a phone incorporated into the camera. Can we adapt the use of a product? That would be the A part. Modify, can we change it up? Can we put it to another use? Can we eliminate something within the product that is not necessary? These are the sorts of things that you would come up with using this technique, this creative thinking or problem-solving technique. All right, so that's Scamper, ladies and gents. We are going to move on to certain questions that could come across in this section of work. You should be able to answer the following questions. Explain or describe. Remember, that's your middle order question. Split marking. How a business can apply problem-solving techniques to solve business problems. And then more of a lower order question. Identify problem-solving techniques from given scenarios. So maybe if there's talk about the panel of experts, you need to be able to identify that we're expecting you to answer Delphi technique. If they talk about a chair, there's no other problem-solving technique other than the empty chair technique that you can provide us with in that instance. All right, so that is some of the questions that you can come across. Okay, ladies and gents, that is creative thinking and problem solving. We will move on to business opportunities and related factors. So this is the second one. This would have been term 3's work. We're going to move through this relatively quickly just to make sure that you have exposure to this, and also that we have the ability to finish all the content today. Okay, so first and foremost, guys, at the end of this section, you should be able to answer these types of questions. Right, you can pause there and just confirm those are the ones that you need to know. So at the end of the section, or at the end of this session, please go back to these so that you can make sure that you are okay, or you understand what questions are required in this section. Moving on to the key concepts, as in the previous section, we will be touching on these as we go through this information, so I won't be going through this right now, but just so that you know, you can pause there again just to go through the key concepts of this topic. Okay, so the meaning of business opportunities. A business opportunity is an idea for a person to start a business so that they can generate an income. Right, so yes, obviously the main aim of businesses is to make a profit. But remember, there is what they call the triple bottom line. You might have been exposed to that before. There might be other reasons as to why businesses want to be successful, looking at the community and also the environment. So that's part of the triple bottom line. Okay, it is a chance of improving the current operations of a business, which can contribute to greater profitability and or productivity. Okay, so you're wanting to look at ways in which you can improve the business. Right, lastly, entrepreneurs are people who constantly look at a new business opportunity so that they can remain competitive. You do not want to, as a business owner, stagnate. Right, so the word stagnate means to slow down or continue in the way that you are and become irrelevant. Okay, you want to be looking at new business ideas, new ways to improve your business. If you look at any of the big businesses that have been around for a while, your Apples, your Microsofts, they have looked at their business on daily basis, annual basis, and they, in this way, they have been able to improve the way they are doing things, and in this way also ensure that their employees stick around, or employees and customers stay loyal to the business. Right, so that's the meaning of business opportunities, and remember, this could be asked in the form of a definition of business opportunities. Okay, the importance of assessing needs and desires in identifying a business opportunity. Okay, as a business, you want to identify what the needs and desires of your employees are. Or not your employees, apologies, your customers, and you want to be able to satisfy that. Again, guys, this is in your booklets. The bold and bigger font, these are referring to the missing words. Okay, again, this could be asked in this. Discuss the importance of assessing needs and desires, and that would be split marking there. Needs and desires are the keys to a successful business opportunity. The success of a business opportunity depends on the awareness and fulfillment of the target market. Okay, target market being your customers that you're wanting to satisfy. Businesses should create a desire for their product through well-designed advertising and marketing campaigns. You can pause there just to see the answers to the questions that are in front of you in your booklet. And again, you don't necessarily need to know all 6 of those points. Maximum 4 will do. All right, moving on to the next slide there. Different research instruments that can be used. All right, research instruments are tools used to collect, measure, and analyze data related to a business opportunity. Okay, some of the examples there that you might have come across yourselves are surveys. Okay, providing surveys where you can get information from your customers, interviews with those potential customers, questionnaires that can be handed out which provide you with further information, observations where you are just observing your customers and what they do on a daily basis, and then experimenting with different forms that might provide you with some answers to your research. So those are different research instruments. This could be asked in a question like list examples, or list 3 examples of research instruments, and you would be able to give us 3 of those options. Right, so very straightforward. That would be a lower order question. Okay, now we look at the importance of market research for a business. Okay, again, this is in your booklet in the form of a missing word. I'll go through the first 4 with you, and then you can check the rest of your answers. Market research assesses the needs and desires of customers. Entrepreneurs gain information about the industry trends and the actions of their competitors. Helps the business in developing and enhancing the product. And lastly, guides business to minimize risks and identify gaps in customer expectation. What do customers expect? If you are not satisfying that expectation, then there's a gap which you can try and solve. Right? You can have a look at the last 3 and see if that coincides with what you have provided. Right? Then we have a look at internal versus external research. Right, so internal usually conducted by a person within the company, whereas external obviously focuses on the interaction between the business and the customers. So you're looking at the customers outside the business. So just keep that in mind. This is a question in the sense of distinguish between internal or external, and often you can provide the answer in a tabular form. Right, so keep that one in mind, external versus internal research. Okay. Now, the SWOT analysis. This is something that you might have come across before. Very often a question that has been asked, particularly in grade 10, because it's one of the first occasions that you do come across that. SWOT, as you can see in capitals, that is an acronym. And the acronym stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, as you can see, they are split into internal and external. Those are that's the thing that you need to focus on there. Strengths and weaknesses are internal, and opportunities and threats are external. Now, SWOT analysis is a tool, a marketing tool, which is often used to analyze a market. So you would look at your business and analyze what are the strengths of my business. You would look at your business and identify some weaknesses within your business, things that you need to improve upon. And then you look at the external side of things, look at opportunities. What opportunities do we have as a business to broaden our horizons, to improve our profitability? And then lastly, the threats. What outside external threats are there to the business? Classic example would be competition. Okay, obviously a competitor in the area would be a threat to your business. So that's a SWOT analysis. We will be looking at an example in a moment, and I know Mr. Van Zyl is also going to go through an example a little bit later. So let's have a look at what is in your booklet. The booklet refers to a scenario where we're talking about the veggie market. It's a well-established business, and as you can see, the answer for this is often referred to or set up in the form of a table where you've got your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, based on the definition that I provided you earlier, you want to be able to read the scenario and identify in the scenario different strengths. So as you can see, I've got on the screen, I'm underlining as I'm going, well-established business located near a business taxi rank. So that should tell you, okay, that should fit in somewhere. I would expect you maybe to take out a highlighter and do exactly the same. Vandalized on numerous occasions. You can identify where that fits in. The business does not have insurance. Again, that could be something that fits in. Then we look at an alliance with green farms to supply vegetables. Okay, the manager, Hamza, has a good leadership style and financial strength to keep up stock levels. And lastly, many customers prefer to buy at King Fresh Fruit. So those are all aspects that are going to fit into either strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat. So for example, Hamza, the manager of VM, has a good leadership style. That's internal to the business. So that would fall into a strength. Okay, the last one there, it says many customers prefer to buy at King Fresh Fruit. That is a competitor, and as I mentioned, a competitor is a classic example of a threat. Okay, so as you can see, we are able to allocate these to different sections in the table below. This is often an 8-mark type question, so very useful and quite straightforward. So I would expect you guys to do very well in this section. Right, so that's a SWOT analysis, grade 10s. Okay, as you can see, here is the memo. So those underlined points there have been allocated to different sections in the table. Strengths, well-established business, good leadership skills, managers hardworking. Weakness, business does not have insurance, lacks financial strength to keep stock levels up. Opportunities, signed a contract to supply vegetables for local hospitals. And as I mentioned, threats, you've got the fact that it gets vandalized very often, and the competitor, which is King Fresh Fruit and Veg. All right, grade 10s, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to move on to the next section, presentation of business information.